start. Srila Prabhupada-lilamrita. Excuse me. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachades Tarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyas cha kripa sindubhya eva cha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, so Srila Prabhupada's in hospital, but improving step by step. And I never realized until, I've read the whole thing before. It never struck me like it has this time at all. How sick Prabhupada was. He was right on the edge. He stopped breathing. He stopped breathing for about 30 seconds. Totally stopped breathing. And that's really bad, right? I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything of that sort, but he stopped breathing for at least 30 seconds and then suddenly started breathing again. That was before he was put in hospital. So now he's still in hospital, but getting better. I mean, not getting better, but improvement is there, put it that way. Suddenly, one morning, Swami Satchit Ananda, the famous Hatha Yoga guru, entered Prabhupada's room, grinning through his big grey beard. He was dressed in a saffron silk kurta and yogi pants, and accompanied by one of his young American male disciples. Srila Prabhupada sat up in bed, smiling at the pleasant surprise. They had not met before. Srila Prabhupada offered Swami Satchidananda a seat at his bedside and asked Jadharani to stand and give her seat to Swami Satchidananda's disciple. Prabhupada and Swami Satchidananda spoke in Hindi, and no one else in the room could follow their conversation. At one point, however, Srila Prabhupada held up his hand and looked at it with indifference and then disgust. Although his words were Hindi, the gesture and sardonic expression conveyed his meaning. The body was material and therefore could not be expected to be well. Let me just tell you a story. You may be familiar, some of you or all of you, quite possibly, that when Srila Prabhupada was in his final pastimes in Vrindavan, means October, November 1977, bedridden and just basically not eating. One of his godbrothers, Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, came and visited Prabhupada. And Krishnadas Babaji he and Prabhupada were actually quite close, which was, not there so much with other godbrothers. I mean, with a few, but not real like closeness. But they were pretty close. So Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj came in, jumped on the bed down by the feet end, and started speaking with Prabhupada in Bengali. Although actually Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj was fluent in English, very fluent. Radhanath Maharaj tells an interesting little story. Before Radhanath Maharaj met Prabhupada, he was staying with Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj and going on parikrama with him all around Vrajmandala for, I think, months. And Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj never spoke to him. And if he spoke to anyone else, as they're moving around, he spoke Bengali or Hindi. But he never spoke with Radhanath Maharaj. And Radhanath Maharaj assumed that Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj did not speak English. But one day he had to communicate to find out something. So he said to Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, in like very slow, clear English, he said, Maharaj, do you speak English? And Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj said, with a strong Oxford accent, actually, I think I speak English rather well. But they'd been together for weeks. This is at least what I was told. Anyway, Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj jumped on the bed and started speaking in Bengali to Srila Prabhupada, because they're both by birth Bengalis. And Prabhupada usually is just lying there sort of, kind of emotionless. And he would only express anything if he really had to. And then just at the minimum. So now Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj is joking and speaking and laughing, and Prabhupada started smiling and speaking and laughing. Yeah. Suddenly Prabhupada stopped and turned to the disciples who were sitting next to the bed and spoke. Famous verse, Tandera Charana Sevi, Bhakta Sanevas, Janame Hoy, E Abhilas, which means, Tandera Charana Sevi, Bhakta Sanevas, I want to serve Bhakta Sanevas, to live with the devotees and serve their lotus feet. Janame Hoy, E Abhilas, birth after birth, it's my only desire. Very seriously. And then he turned back to Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, and then smiling and laughing again. for a minute or two or something. And suddenly he stopped and pointed to his disciples and said, Tandera Charana Sevi, Bhakta Sanevas, Janame Janame Hoy, A Abhilas. Same verse. My A Abhilas means my only desire is to live in this association of devotees and serve their lotus feet, janame, janame hoy, birth after birth. And then he turned back to Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, and again it was the same thing, laughing, smiling, and talking. Mainly Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, but Prabhupada visibly got into it for another minute or two. Then suddenly Prabhupada stopped for a third time. Tandera Charana Sevi, Bhakta Sanevas, Janame Janame Hoy, A Abhilas. You understand it, right? Yeah. Emphasizing the association of devotees is just the most special of all special things. Right, okay. Prabhupada asked Achyutananda to read aloud from a particular purport of the Srimad Bhagavatam, quote, if there's enough milk, enough grains, enough fruit, enough cotton, enough silk, and enough jewels, then why the people need, anyway, maybe it's a misprint, then why the people need for economic development in the shape of machine and tools? Can the machine and tools supply vigor and vitality to the man and animals? Can the machinery produce grains, fruits, and milk, or jewelry or silk? Is not jewelry and silk varieties of foodstuff prepared with ghee and grains or milk and fruits sufficient for man's pure, luxurious, and healthy life? Then why there's artificial, luxurious life of cinema, cars, radio, flesh, and hotels? Has the civilization produced any good result more than the dog's mentality of quarreling with one another individually and nationally? Has the civilization enhanced the cause of equality and fraternity by sending thousands of men in the hellish factory and the war fields at the whims of a particular man? Oh, Prabhupada, his incisive thinking and perception, incredible, absolutely incredible. When Prabhupada offered to play the record he and his disciples had made, Swami Satchidananda politely agreed. But when Prabhupada offered to play the other side of the record, Swami Satchidananda said he had to leave. He offered Prabhupada some fruits, and Prabhupada, after accepting them, told his disciples, distribute these and give him some of our fruit in exchange. As Swami Satchidananda rose to leave, Srila Prabhupada suddenly got out of bed and stood shakily. No, 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 Swami Satchidananda protested. Don't disturb yourself. And then he was gone, escorted by Achyutananda. Srila Prabhupada lay back in bed. Is he a Swami? Jadharani asked. Why not? Prabhupada replied. But after a few moments he added, Swami means one who knows Krishna. There was no more talk about it, but Prabhupada was pleased by the unexpected visit. The constant coming and going of Srila Prabhupada's young followers, wearing tilak on their foreheads and carrying watermelons. Do you remember that story? Do you remember that story? Do you remember that story? We read last night. Jadharani, we brought him many different kinds of fruit. We told him we had apples, but he was so tired he only said, "Oh," and seemed disinterested. We told him we'd brought oranges, but again, "Oh." He gave so many tired ohs, he seemed disinterested. Finally I said, "We brought you watermelons," and immediately his face lit up. "Oh," a long oh. So the devotees are coming and going with watermelons. Special food, flowers, and paintings of Krishna. So this created special interest among the hospital staff. Sometimes workers would ask questions, and sometimes the devotees would talk with them about the Hare Krishna movement. Once a nurse came by Prabhupada's room and asked, "In the caste system in India, what is the name of the highest caste? What are they called?" Prabhupada firmly replied, "Krishna conscious." He asked a disciple to give the nurse prasadam. On June the 5th, Prabhupada received an affectionate letter signed by all his disciples in San Francisco. After reading how they'd stayed up all night chanting and praying for his recovery, he dictated a short letter. "My dear boys and girls, I'm so much obliged to you for your prayers to Krishna to save my life. Due to your sincere and ardent prayer, Krishna has saved my life. I was to die on Tuesday, certainly, but because you prayed sincerely, I'm saved. Now I'm improving gradually and coming to original condition. Now I can hope to meet you again and chant with you Hare Krishna. I'm so glad to receive the report of your progressive march and hope there will be no difficulty in your understanding Krishna consciousness. My blessings are always with you, and with confidence you go on with your chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare," unquote. The following day, a tape arrived from Mukunda, a recording of the San Francisco devotees singing Shri Ram, Jai Jai Ram, and other bhajans. Prabhupada dictated another letter saying that as soon as he got strength for traveling, he would come again to San Francisco. In the meantime, he wrote, "I shall be very glad to know what arrangements you are going to do for the Rath Yatra festival. Make it a grand procession and unique introduction in the United States." Some of Swamiji's disciples gathered in the storefront at 26 Second Avenue one night. Sitting around on the faded rug, they discussed the meaning of Swamiji's illness. He had said that when the heart attack had come, it had been meant for his death. Therefore he had called out loudly, Hare Krishna, thinking that the moment of death had come. Kirtanananda remembered that Swamiji had once told him that when he was on the boat coming to America, the captain's wife had read his palm and said that if he survived his 71st year, he would live to be 100. Madhusudana asked, how could a pure devotee be subject to a death blow? Kirtanananda replied that it was impersonal to think that because Swamiji was a pure devotee, nothing could happen to him, and that they should not even worry about him. Of course, the apparent suffering, or even the passing away of a pure devotee, wasn't the same as an ordinary man's. Swamiji had given the example of the cat. Sometimes she carries her kittens in her mouth, and sometimes she catches a mouse in the same jaws. The mouse feels the jaws of death, but the kitten feels safety and affection. So although Swamiji's death call might have appeared similar to an ordinary man's, for Swamiji there had been no fear or danger. As the disciples discussed their realizations, they began to clear away their doubts about why such an apparent setback had come upon their spiritual master. Satsvarup mentioned the letter he had typed for Swamiji at the hospital. In the letter, Swamiji had said he was not afraid of Maya and could not be touched by Maya, but he had also referred to being stabbed by his heart. Brahmananda said that Swamiji had once told him that a spiritual master may suffer for the sins of his disciples because he has to take their karma. Swamiji now had about 50 disciples, so maybe that had been the cause of his heart attack. They talked about the importance of being very strict and not committing any sins with which to burden their spiritual master. Of course, that is really a very important part of Krishna consciousness, extremely important, because of the relationship, because the spiritual master has accepted the disciples and taken responsibility for them. He has to sort of process their karma, not actually take all of it, but process it through him, and then hand it over to Krishna, who neutralizes it all. So therefore, even if the spiritual master is completely pure like Prabhupada, still with all that karma running through and passing through, some can get caught up, and therefore illness comes and anxiety, like psychological, emotional disturbance. I mean, not like ordinary people's, but just some anxiety comes, Prabhupada said. Yeah. So therefore the disciples have to really be attentive and careful in their practice. Another reason for Swamiji's illness, Kirtanananda said, was that Krishna had arranged it to engage them all in intimate service to Swamiji. By serving a pure devotee, one gains the favor of Krishna. And Krishna was letting them all become purified by massaging and serving Swamiji so intimately. Because they were massaging him, at least the young boys were, the young men, the whole day, except for when he slept. The rest of the time, however, it would be at least 18 hours or something. He was just constantly, two young men massaging him. Right. Satsvarup recalled that Swamiji had said in a letter to the devotees in San Francisco that he was supposed to have died, but their prayers had saved him. Swamiji had told Kirtanananda that Krishna had heard the devotees' prayers and had granted their wishes. Krishna was allowing Swamiji to go on with his mission of spreading Krishna consciousness in the West. It wasn't on his own behalf that Swamiji wanted to live, but to continue his mission. Everyone agreed with Kirtanananda that it was a form of impersonalism for them to think that because Swamiji was a pure devotee, he didn't need their loving care. They should continue to care for Swamiji even after he got better. He had put himself in their care, and they had to reciprocate accordingly. Swamiji had said they were like fathers to him, so they should not allow him to play the drum long and vigorously, to sing in the park for hours, to stay up talking late at night, or to do anything that might endanger his health. Roy Ram said that Swamiji had asked him to reply to several letters from devotees on the West Coast and explained that he would probably never again be able to take on the strain of public lectures. The Sankirtan movement now rested on their shoulders. Roy Ram had explained in his letters that it was Krishna's grace that Swamiji was still with them and able to advise them when things got rough. But now they must increase their efforts to distribute Krishna consciousness to the world. The talk turned to the need for them to realize Swamiji's instructions and become strong devotees. Everyone agreed that they could do this by studying Swamiji's books more carefully and always acting according to his instructions. When they told Prabhupada about their philosophical discussions, he replied only briefly, quote, "Krishna heard all your sincere prayers, and he thought, all right, let him stay and do his nonsense." So many devotees are praying on his behalf. I'll read for another few minutes. Before Prabhupada's illness, the devotees had planned a big event in Tompkins Square Park for Sunday, June the 4th. The Parks Department had given them the use of a loudspeaker system and a stage in the band shell. Mr. Kalman, producer of the Hare Krishna record, had encouraged them to advertise and had gotten in touch with the TV stations. The devotees had begun making Hare Krishna mantra signs so that everyone, even the TV viewer, could chant. Although now unable to go, Srila Prabhupada said they should still have their festival. He would compose a special address for Kirtanananda to read to the public. From his hospital bed, he dictated the short speech, an address to American youth by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. On June the 4th, several hundred people gathered around the band shell in Tompkins Square Park while the devotees played harmonium kartals and mridangas and chanted Hare Krishna over the PA system. Many people in the crowd chanted along, playing their own instruments and even joining the devotees on stage. Kirtanananda stood before the microphone and announced that Bhaktivedanta Swami, although ill at Beth Israel Hospital, had prepared a message for everyone. Many among the Lower East Side crowd were acquainted with Bhaktivedanta Swami and his chanting of Hare Krishna. They listened as Kirtanananda read. My dear young beautiful boys and girls of America, I've come to your country with great hope and a great mission. My spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Shishimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj asked me to preach this cult of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Western world. That was the seed-giving incident. That was 1922, as we read last night. Gradually the seed fructified, and I was prepared to come to the Western world. Still, I do not know why I was so much attracted by the land of America. But from within, Krishna dictated that instead of going to Europe, I should better go to America. So you can see that I've come to your country under order of superior authority. And even after arriving here, when I perceived that some of the youngsters are being misled, confused, and frustrated, this is not the condition of your country only, but in every country, the young people are neglected, although it is they who are the flower and future hope of everyone. Prabhupada said like that when I first saw him at Auckland University. He did a program, and I was there. And Prabhupada said, because it's all university students, Prabhupada said, you are the flower of your country, the future of your country. So I thought to myself that if I go to the American youth with my message and they join with me in this movement, then it will spread all over the world. And then all the problems of the world will be solved. How I would like to be with you in person today, but Krishna has prevented that. So please pardon me and accept my blessings in this written form. This process of Sankirtan, the singing and dancing, is so nice because from the very beginning it places everyone on the spiritual platform. There are different platforms or levels to our existence. The bodily platform, the mental platform, the intellectual platform, and the spiritual platform. When you stand on the spiritual platform, then all the problems created by the necessities of the body, mind, intellect, and ego become solved. Therefore, I appeal to you to join this movement most seriously. The process is very simple. We ask everyone to come join with us in chanting, hear something of the philosophy of life taught by Lord Krishna. Take a little prasadam, foodstuff that is prepared and offered to the Lord, and peacefully, with refreshed mind, go home. That is our mission. We do have certain restrictions. Practically, they're not restrictions, but something better in place of something inferior. The other day, Mr. Alan Burke questioned me on his television program. Alan Burke at that time was extremely famous interviewer with a weekly television program, extremely famous. We read about Prabhupada's appearance on his program some days ago. Swamiji, why do you insist on marriage? And I answered him, unless one becomes peaceful in home life, how can he make any advance in any other area of life or knowledge? Therefore, everyone should get married, just to be happy and peaceful. You are all beautiful, nice, educated boys and girls. Why shouldn't you get married and live happily? If you live peacefully, regulated lives, eating nothing but Krishna prasadam, then the tissues in your brain will develop for spiritual consciousness and understanding. However, if you're not agreeable to these simple restrictions, still I request you to join the chanting with us. Everybody can do that, And that will gradually clarify everything, and all problems will be solved, and you'll find a new chapter of your life. Just this week, I've received a letter from a girl in New Jersey who has had such an experience. She writes, "Dear Swamiji, you don't know me by name, but I'm the girl who joined your parade in Washington Square this past Saturday. When I first saw your group, I thought you were all crazy, either that or on dope of some kind. After listening and talking with some of you, I realized that it was neither of those. You people plainly believed in what you were doing, and I admired you for that much. But my curiosity drove me further, and I had to find out why. So I followed you, and as I did, the chant you sang began to take hold. The next thing I knew, I felt free of myself, and I was singing too. I didn't know where I was or where I was going, but I was too elated to care. It wasn't until we stopped that I learned where I was. By that time, I'd picked up bits and pieces of what Krishna consciousness was about. One of your members asked me to visit your temple, and I followed you still further, hoping to discover just what it was that made you feel so strong about something I'd never heard of. After having taken a meal with you and reading your literature, I left, but not alone. I took with me a new awareness of life. It occurred to me how futile my desires for the material things in life were, that a new dress or big house or color television were not important. If only people would open their eyes to the endless number of pleasures God has already given us, there would be no need for looking any further. You people are truly lucky. You may have had to do without many things, but because of this, you're able to enjoy the simple God-given treasures of the world. Because of your beliefs, you are wealthy, and I thank you for sharing a bit of that wealth with me." Unquote. That's the end of her letter. And now Prabhupada's speech continues, or message. "So we invite you to please chant with us. It is such a nice thing. Come to our temple if you like. Take a little prasadam and be happy. It is not very difficult if you just chant this, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That will save you. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I assume well, I don't know actually. I have to see if we'll read tomorrow. Maybe we'll just carry on Monday. Probably just carry on Monday. Although we'll have a class, I think, tomorrow night here for anyone who's interested on something Krishna conscious. Maybe something to do with Lord Chaitanya for a change. Hare Krishna. Oh, a Christian. Oh, our special, system. There you go.
Maharaj, I'm now starting to realize more how 90% of our Krishna consciousness comes from association. And there's a statement in the Nectar of Devotion which says something like that when we associate with the flower-like devotees of the Lord, then if our heart is clear, then our heart begins to reflect the qualities of those devotees. So my question is, how do we initially clear our heart enough to be able to receive and accept that association and reflect it?
Okay. Well, you just, in the beginning at least, there are degrees of opening of the heart and capacity to accept and absorb more and more of the Shakti of association. But the first thing, in one sense, the first thing is to not be envious of the devotees. But actually still, there are people, there have been people, there are people who are envious of the devotees of Krishna consciousness, but still, because they become exposed to it, maybe just hearing Harinam, even just seeing devotees, oh, Hare Krishna, even if they don't like it. So the potency of Krishna consciousness is greater than the potency of Maya. So therefore, even if someone is envious, but they have some contact, it will penetrate their hearts. Yeah, but otherwise, if someone's not envious and is, like a soft-hearted person, they will initially, it'll be much easier for them. Their hearts will be just much more open and it'll just sort of flow in. Yeah. But otherwise, in a general sense, if we talk about us, because, we've already reached another point of being practitioners. So for us to open our hearts progressively more and more, we have to chant Hare Krishna. I'd say we have to do two things really. We have to chant Hare Krishna as much as possible without offenses. Just as much as possible. Point one. And point two, we have to serve the spiritual master, which means Srila Prabhupada, who's spiritual master for all of us, and also for the disciples of current gurus to serve the spiritual master one's been initiated by. Those two things are just super foundational. And the more we can embrace them or at least accept them, even if the mind, I know what your mind is like, but phew, Hare Krishna, even though the mind sometimes has other ideas which it feels convinced about. Gosh. And therefore Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, from yesterday, should have mentioned, that in the morning we must beat our minds 100 times with a stick. And at night, night is coming in a few hours, we must beat our minds 100 times with shoes. Of course, not exactly literally, but, we have to take a strong position. Basically, that's what it means. We have to take a strong position with our minds and dictate that, all right, mind, you just stop this and you engage in Krishna consciousness. You've got to be decisive with your mind. Because otherwise the mind, one of the most fantastic creations of Maya. Gosh, unbelievable. Otherwise the mind will tell you that, It's okay. But, the big but, don't be a fanatic. You know what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita? What does Krishna say? What can, what's the word? Repression. What can repression accomplish? So take it easy. Be natural. Don't be aggressive with yourself. That's the mind. And the mind will tell you, listen, we have been together for so long. I'm your friend. I'm concerned about you. I have all these ideas for your happiness. I'm not joking either. I'm not joking. Yeah, so, right. So we do have to take a firm hand with our minds. But like that, chanting Hare Krishna, by all means, by any means, attentively, without offenses, and then serving the spiritual master. There you've got, sort of in a nutshell, the essence of Krishna consciousness. And by doing that, to the best of your ability, or even to more than the best of your ability, by just trying absolutely as much as you can, then your heart will become receptive, to the association. All the association includes, the deities. Isn't our altar nice? Gosh, it's so nice. Yeah. You'll become receptive to, to the good instructions of the devotees, the good advice of the devotees. You'll become more receptive to the deities. You'll become more receptive to the value of service and more receptive to hearing about Krishna. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Any other comment or question from all you intelligent devotees, the most advanced devotees around? Hare Krishna. Anyway, you're all doing great service. My gosh. I feel humbled and grateful to have your association. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.